So it's my favourite time of the week when I get to sit down with your comments on the Kermode Uncut site. A couple of themes running at the moment. About a week ago I was thinking about whether or not short stories necessarily make better films than novels. I was talking about things like Don't Look Now, the Daphne du Maurier and the Birds obviously, and I asked you to let me know what your favourite films adapted from short stories were. We had a massive response to this. Here are some of your replies. This from Dan Garday, Smart, great topic. I think the reason short stories can and do work is that when you think of much of the best cinema, it comes down to when directors and screenwriters have one single idea, theme or concept. Obviously, shorter stories normally means more focused ideas. Examples, Memento, memory loss, Secretary, sadomasochism, something else in there as well, Brokeback Mountain, forbidden love, Rear Window, voyeurism. Whilst for me the most frustrating cinematic experiences occur when films try to cram too much in or leave certain elements of the narrative underdeveloped, often as a result of trying to be too faithful to the source material when it's a longer piece of work. And I think that's particularly true of the Stephen King novels, with the possible exception of Misery, which is a really fine work. This from Zhead 2. Out of all of them, for me, it has to be Rear Window, based on the Cornell Woolrich short story It Had to Be Murder. The core ideas of voyeurism, again, and paranoia are adapted beautifully and unfold with great pace, not to mention made iconic by Hitchcock, and the hypnotic chemistry between Jimmy Stewart and Grace Kelly. This from 123 Rock Fan, and this has a special place in my heart. Although most critics lambasted it as sentimental drivel, as I did when it first came out, I have a soft spot for Spielberg's artificial intelligence, as do I now. Based on the story Super Toys Last All Summer Long by Brian Aldiss, AI captures the biting political satire perfectly, but also captures the incredible feeling of loneliness that the original story evoked so well. I have to confess, AI, the film, is one of those times when I have really got it wrong. The first time I saw it, it was in New York. I thought it was sentimental, schmaltzy, boring. I have to say it is now one of my favourite Spielberg movies, and I was completely wrong about it the first time round. This from Roger Edwards. Bill Lancaster's screenplay for John Carpenter's The Thing is a masterpiece of tension, extrapolated from the exceedingly pulpy and dated short story novella Who Goes There by John W. Campbell Jr. Of course, two versions of that, The Thing and Thing from Another World. One of the interesting stories about The Thing is it took a couple of adaptations before they were actually able to get the shape-shifting on screen, as opposed to just having James Arness as famously the big carrot. Couple more. This from Blue Juicer. How about Jindabyne, starring the ever-excellent Gabriel Byrne and Laura Linney? Now, Jindabyne's really interesting because it's based on a Raymond Carver short story, and there's a version of it in Shortcut, the movie, and there's also the basis of Jindabyne, the movie. And the two things are very, very different, but they both have the same short story source, and they both take the story in very different ways. They make a very interesting companion piece. And this from Mist. The Lawnmower Man, I think this is ironic, based on a Stephen King short story but bears no relationship to the short story. It's true, because The Lawnmower Man, the film, is about a guy who gets his brain super wired up to the information superhighway and he turns into a cyber god. And the short story is about somebody who gets the great god Pan to mow his lawn. Finishes off with no wonder Stephen King wanted his name removed from it. All of which brings me to a subject which has proved extremely divisive here on the Kermode Uncut blog. Last week, I did a blog saying, Linda Blair, she's a great trooper, good actress, done loads of different movies. What are your favourite? Because bear in mind, I started out working for Fangoria magazine, where Linda Blair is pretty much one down from royalty. This provoked a number of responses. Firstly, a couple of the negatives, and there were a few of these. This from JLC37. Enough! We know you adore The Exorcist, but Linda Blair, a real talent, just because she's funny and down to earth, who cares when her output has been so pedestrian and dreary? And this from Crash Landon. She's had a career, extraordinary. She's been in movies, but nothing extraordinary apart from The Exorcist. What's extraordinary to me is that by being a famous critic, well, you flatter me, but you can throw out such a silly statement and actually find a few hardcore Yes fans nodding their heads in agreement. Well, delightfully, there were a few hardcore Yes fans, and here is just some of them. This from Ashley Weatherall. There are so many to choose from in terms of your favourite Linda Blair movies. Up your alley. It's a shame it isn't available on DVD. It's much better than the Mel Brooks counterpart, Life Stinks. I also like the other trashy comedy Linda made with Murray Langton called Night Patrol. Yes, it's a bad comedy, but a lot of fun when the watcher is very, very drunk. This from Tammyville. I remember coming in late one night and seeing Linda in a little-known film called Sarah T. Portrait of a Teenage Alcoholic. It was a made-for-TV production co-starring Mark Hamill pre-Star Wars. Production was cheap and the quality was poor, but Linda Blair was fantastic in the lead role. This from Neil Bowyer, without a doubt, Repossessed with Leslie Nielsen. And this is a shame, because much as I really like Linda Blair, I do think Repossessed is a clunker, although I think she's a really good sport in it. Funnily enough, there's a short film that she made beforehand in which she did a similar spoof called The Heckling, which I don't think has ever been released, but interesting if you like Repossessed. This from Full Metal Jackson. She was in the S Club 7 TV show. She was. The thought of Dr. K watching this just because Linda Blair's in it made me chuckle. Not as much as it made me chuckle actually watching it because Linda Blair was in it, which I did. This from Marge Gunderson. I can't possibly comment on her film career, having only seen her in The Exorcist. I have, however, seen her in an episode of Supernatural, in which she was rather good. This from Ninth Configurator. Linda Blair is a terrific actress that deserves more substantial work, but she seems to be stuck in C-movie hell. With the right material, she could be as good as any actress of her generation. My favourite film of hers after The Exorcist is Hell Night, which actually is a cracking horror movie. Finally, this last two things. This from Bloody Sam. I got her autograph at a memorabilia show. She was really nice to talk to and clearly very passionate about her dog charity. And this from Brian in the New Forest. Mark shouldn't waste his time getting us to list good films from Linda's paltry CV. He should be badgering every director he meets into casting her in a comeback role.